It's the Life Up Front Engineering Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Waters, covering ideas, people, and tools on the cutting edge of product development. As always, join the conversation at lifeupfront.com. Featured on the show today, Sunglass.io and its co-founder, Nitin Rao. Sunglass is a new startup promising to make cloud-based 3D collaboration a reality. Now, I'm a huge believer in cloud technology and really excited to see enabling technology like this. Nitin and I met for dinner in Boston last month, I believe, for a deeper dive into Sunglass, and he agreed to share the Sunglass story with my listeners today. Nitin, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Hey, my pleasure. For listeners who are unaware, what is Sunglass today? And what is some of the future vision?
Sunglass is an MIT startup working to democratize access to design tools. At Sunglass.io, which is a browser-based platform, multiple people can collaborate together on product design and architecture projects. So you can bring in a 3D model in 45 different file formats, get started, and work together without being constrained by a desktop.
And everything takes place in the cloud, so you just need a browser and a good connection to the internet.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you mentioned 45 different flavors of geometry that you can bring into Sunglass today, and I think I might be breaking the story on this tomorrow, but you have a big announcement that's going to hit the wires about the same time as this podcast is released. Could you share with us now? I promise I won't tell anyone until tomorrow.
Great. So we want to make it as simple as possible for CAD users to bring their 3D content into Sunglass so that they can have collaborative sessions. And so we're announcing plugins into SolidWorks, SketchUp, Rhino, and processing. And so making it a little bit simpler through those plugins to directly bring in 3D content. Also, we're making it easier to bring in files from Dropbox, Box, your desktop, and Gmail. And so you'll get a box through one of our partners, and you'll be able to seamlessly pick out the files you want to bring in without worrying about which format it's in.
Great. So the idea is that today, if you're collaborating on 3D geometry, you almost have to be sitting shoulder to shoulder, looking at the same screen, correct? And Sunglass is going to allow people to work with 3D models from anywhere in the world. I suppose it could be more than just two people working on the model as well, right? And what kind of collaboration can you do today? Is it geometry editing, reshaping, markup? What kind of things do you envision people doing with Sunglass today?
Yeah. So to the first part of your question, we can support up to 1 million people collaborating at the same time. So it's designed to be very scalable. And like you mentioned, everything happens server side, so in the cloud. And what can you do right now? So that list keeps growing. To start with, we're not trying to compete with the modeling tools. We just want to complement them. And so you can bring in your 3D content, share your screen, and guide another user through a discussion. You can also have a voice conversation. So we've got free voice chat within that, and you can make annotations on specific parts of the model. What's interesting is that multiple people can make those, and right now you can make simple transformations. So you can make simple edits to the dimensions of the model. What's interesting is that multiple people can do that at the same time. So at any point, including at the end of the broadcast, you can synchronize with another person's version on the fly. And this is an early version of a much broader play where we're hoping to really become the GitHub of 3D and have built-in version control so that teams can, on the fly, say, you know what, that version on Friday afternoon at 1 p.m., that was great. Can we go to that? And you should be able to do that within seconds. What's also exciting is that because it's designed to be asynchronous collaboration, you can have your 3D model up there, have a collaborator, as one of my users was saying, have a collaborator in China come in, play with the 3D model when you're not there, and then you can come back and see what happened to your model. And the entire thing is encrypted, so it's not something that anybody can download without your permission.
And there are a number of tools too, right? You have, as you mentioned, a VoIP app that's built in. So if you are collaborating at the same time, it's a little bit like Xbox games where they have a mic built into the controller and people from all over the world are fighting each other or in common enemies and speaking to each other live over the VoIP app. So I think that's true. And then you also have, I saw some ability to leave notes almost like IM sessions in context with the model. True?
Yeah, so we'll have grouping of different models, and so our architecture is such that we can support very complex projects, and so and that complexity will our capability will keep increasing, and so you'll be able to pinpoint specific objects and leave annotations that are spatial. So you can mark specific parts, and you can have both text or you can sketch on the object.
Now, most people who know me know that I'm a huge believer in disruptive SaaS products, cloud-based products. I'm particularly interested in seeing that coming to the CAE market, computer-aided engineering and CAD. Not everyone shares my enthusiasm, and a lot of people will say, okay, the common things you hear about cloud and SaaS is security. Now, I think every industry that SaaS and cloud has come to has faced that question and for the most part answered it. So it's still a relatively new area for the engineering product development market. How would you answer the security question today?
Sure. So there are two parts to that actually. There's security and there's this general workflow. The sort of the choice of the browser versus a desktop client. So as far as security goes, like you mentioned, every other industry has worked on this problem, and so we've got solid encryption, and that's going to keep getting stronger. So that ultimately you're just seeing 3D becomes a link, and you see a web-enabled format. You do not see a 3D model, and so you cannot just download it because of the encryption, because it's converted to a different web-enabled format. And as far as the environment itself goes, we're beginning with a browser-based format, but browser-based environment. But our vision is for you to be able to work with anybody on any product from any device. And so you'll soon also be able to do this within any of your desktop environments. You'll be able to tap into Sunglass tools as also from mobile devices. And so we expect people to for the browser to be a channel of choice, but really it's an open ecosystem, and we want people to have the freedom to work however they're most comfortable.
Well, I would say right behind security in the engineering space, the next thing that most people throw up as an objection is performance. In fact, I think there are a lot of people out there today who don't believe that you can rotate geometry in real time quickly enough to make it a realistic workflow over the web. The internet's not fast enough. The technology isn't in place. I think a lot of people envision this as a remote machine, or maybe they've experienced trying to do a remote desktop with GoToMeeting or WebEx, and that's what they're basing this on. Now, I want you to comment, but I'll start by saying the thing that got me really excited about Sunglass was your homepage, which shows some pretty complex geometry spending real time. And people can go there and try that today. So, how would you answer that? What is the current state of the art? What are you bringing to market now that's different than what people may have seen in the past?
Yeah, so for starters, just to start with the baseline, even on desktops today, if you switch on a render, you can't work on your computer. You just need to go get a cup of coffee. And so heavy tools like rendering analysis are halting, in some cases crashing today's desktop tools. And so that's really the baseline we're starting from. We think that the cloud is one more is an alternative. And you can switch on processes, and because they run on parallelized engines, you can continue to work on your 3D model, and you'll have the option to work in your developer environment, such as Rhino or SolidWorks when you like, and bring it into Sunglass when you like, and so you'll have that freedom. What's more, if you look at Google Earth as a great example, there are streaming technologies that let you work with massive 3D projects. But at any point in time, a much smaller level of complexity is presented in front of you. So we can recognize what kind of a computer you're on, what your internet speed is, and we can on the fly change the fidelity of the 3D model and make sure that you'll be okay. And so we think that the kind of projects that would stop desktop will be the kind you'll be able to run on Sunglass. So you won't need Harvard's labs, but with any device, you should be able to work on complex projects. And it's a work in progress. Some of the best parts are coming in another 2 to 3 months, and we're grateful for our early users who are giving us feedback and helping us shape as we're working on it.
What's the base technology? I mean, is this HTML, HTML5? What technologies power what you're doing today?
Yeah, so the front end uses HTML5, WebGL, and layers that we have written on top of it. So the front end uses WebGL, HTML5.
Okay, not all browsers today support that, right?
So Google Chrome, Firefox support it. Opera 12 just came out with, just like Safari, with the ability to switch on WebGL, and so that's a big chunk of that's already a majority of the market, and the other browsers will follow suit.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, from everything I hear, HTML5 is essentially going to be the standard platform going forward. Now, tell me a little more about the evolution of Sunglass. How did you get the idea for it? Where did it come from? How did you get started? Who are you collaborating with?
Sure. We are two co-founders. My co-founder's name is Kaustav Biswas. He was in the MIT Design Computation Group. He's built parametric CAD software and worked on large and complicated projects, and also been a small designer. And so out of Kaustav's frustrations for 3D to be fast, easy, accessible, Sunglass started off. We got positive feedback from the user community, from universities, from developers, and we sensed that this was something which was a hard problem and something we could contribute to.
Okay. And so you two met first at MIT. You were at MIT Sloan School of Business, correct? And graduated last year from that.
I did, yeah.
Okay. Well, you grew up in India, as we discussed over lunch, got an IT degree, I believe, from a university there, and then made your way over here. Somehow managed to get into MIT Sloan School of Business, one of the most prestigious schools, B schools out there. Tell me a little bit more about that history.
So before business school, I was in India with a variety of startups, including a human resources training startup, which we took from zero to training several thousand executives, a school startup, which was part of a larger company, where I was part of a team where we helped start about 16 different schools, budget schools for students in semi-rural India, and an internet community I launched that had about 300,000 visitors every year. These were predominantly services plays, and Sunglass really presented an opportunity to work on a product company, and that something that was defensible and could have a high impact. If you think about it, like I think it was Peter Diamandis who was listing the ideas that can shape productivity of mankind, and at least two design-related ideas were up there. So both Kaustav and I felt that getting design tools in the hands of more people really meant getting more brains on an important problem. So we were pretty excited about it, and the team's grown since.
Yeah, how many are you today?
So we have teams in both San Francisco and India, and we're about 12 team members now. And we've got like a number of part-time team members as well.
Well, so you came to the United States after working on the web on some pretty interesting projects Came to MIT, learned all about business, got a degree from MIT Sloan School of Business, met Kaustav. The two of you started this, and then you just decided, hey, let's go find some funding. You were telling me about the process of getting venture capital funding. You've got some really heavy hitters, both funding and advising you. In my head was spinning as you were naming off some of these names. So I know you're not normally a name dropper, but why don't you share some of the people that are involved in backing and believing in what you're doing?
So we've been really fortunate that we're backed by long-term investors who shared the mission of democratizing access to design. Some of our investors include our investors come from both coasts and include General Catalyst Partners, Mitch Kapoor, who founded Lotus, Ram Shriram, who founded Jungli and was one of the first investors in Google, and Maynard Webb, who's on the board of Salesforce, and about 18 other investors. So they've been of great support and advice, and we've been trying to learn from companies that have run massively parallel scalable systems, especially with a sort of cloud component.
So who's the end user? Who's the customer for you?
Our beta users have a bias towards small and medium designers, and within that there's a bias towards product designers and there's also architects. And we think when we hear about a guy or girl, a person in a Starbucks running a global business with collaborators in another part of the United States or across, in another continent, that's very, very exciting. We think the idea of an interesting customer is changing, and increasingly you're going to have small designers with very fluid budgets building very cool stuff. So we want to be paranoid supporters and see how we can help.
So those are individual users, but if you think about the idea of having a platform that effectively handles both collaboration and 3D geometry over the web in the cloud, it's not an easy problem to tackle. That sounds like a play that other software companies would be interested in collaborating with you on. How do you plan to roll that out?
Yeah, so we have both established companies as also a long list of indie developers who'll be launching bite-sized apps on the Sunglass platform over the next several months, and we're pretty excited about that. And you're right, there's also value certainly for sort of large enterprises that are traditionally CAD customers. It's designed to be viral for people to add others to collaborative sessions, and so we're really excited to see where the community takes this.
How could people, my listeners in particular, find out more? I'm assuming this may be the first time they've heard of Sunglass, but how can they learn more about the tool? How can they get their hands on it? And what can they do with it if they get their hands on it today?
So using Google Chrome or Firefox, they can open sunglass.io in their browser, create an account, and get started. They can bring in any of their existing 3D projects, and they can add collaborators, and they can have a discussion and see if this helps their workflow. They can also try our cloud render as an example of an early app, and they can also publish this 3D content and embed it anywhere across the web as embedded 3D content. So just like YouTube has embedded videos, you can right now embed your 3D content using the Sunglass player.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. So that would be an interactive embedded object, so you could rotate and spin it if you just came to the web page where that was deployed?
Yeah, absolutely. And not just that, if you're not there to actually guide the other person, you can save a couple of views that you like and set it to play or let the user sort of explore themselves this 3D world that you want to embed somewhere across the internet.
So This might be a hot button topic. It might be controversial. Feel free to decline to answer. But, I focus primarily on the CAD and CAE product development world. Do you think cloud-based products are inevitable? Are we moving away from desktop completely?
I think there's definitely a move towards shared resources, shared production capabilities, shared tools, shared access to sources of financing. So there's these different. There's going to be a move towards shared resources. As my co-founder says, there's going to be sort of like less silicon per capita. I think we prefer not to get into the ideology of sort of desktop versus cloud, because really it's more about an and rather than or. There are a number of great tools, and we're building one that will let you, over time, use your desktop to tap into and send compute heavy processes into the cloud. And then there's the browser. And so I think the idea of using shared resources is inevitable. But that doesn't necessarily need to change the workflow. I think it can complement the workflow.
Yeah, I think that's a smart approach. So, and I believe that, like today, most of the geometry creation that's going on around Sunglass will be done on a desktop-based machine. That might change in the future, but you have a good, solid approach to kind of mix the two ideas.
So for listeners tuning in, we'd love for them to play with Sunglass and see in what ways it's helpful and in what ways it can be improved. There's a feedback button, so we're always looking to improve it. The good thing is, we're not in an era of annual licenses. We ship new code like essentially every day. And so as they let us know what can be helpful, we'd love to improve it. As also developers, so if there's an interesting piece of software that is not cloud enabled or that can be written to take advantage of the cloud or can take advantage of the network, do let us know. We'd love to partner with them to bring these ideas out.
So if people want to go to Sunglass and try it out today, they can do that at no cost, right? And it's sunglass.io.
Yep. And there's also an API, so they can download the plugins for SolidWorks, Rhino, SketchUp processing, and they can even request the API if they'd like to build on top of this. They can reach out to us, and we'd love to chat with them.
Now, I may be way behind the times, but I had never heard of a .io web address until I found Sunglass. What's the story behind that?
So a lot of computing startups use .io. So even though .io is technically Indian Ocean, .io is used is a play on input-output, used by a number of computing startups.
I see. Well, Nitin, thanks for joining us today and explaining a little bit about the platform and the product as it stands. And again, I encourage my listeners to go to www.sunglass.io, check it out, log in, try it. It's free right now. And I am positive that the team would love to hear your feedback and ideas on how to improve the product more.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
To comment on this podcast, or to find more podcasts and articles, please join the conversation at lifeupfront.com.